Greetings and welcome to
YAS Podcast, formerly known as
YAS Stripper Podcast.
This is our podcast, all of ours.
A podcast for all sex workers.
In this podcast, we will discuss the ins and outs, ups and downs of our lives and experiences as sex workers. I am your host, Daisy Ducati.
I am your heauxprahs, Gigi Holiday.
I'm your stripper queen from the north, Onyx.
I'm A.M. Davies, and this is YAS Podcast.
Hi, you're listening to YAS Podcast, aka Yes, a Stripper Podcast, and this is Lisa Michelle, and I'll be your host today. We have A.M. Davies as our producer. Say hello.
Hi, Yas, it's Yas Podcast. I know it's a little different, right? What do you think? What do you think about saying Yas Podcast? How does that feel when you speak it?
Does it sound like I say Yas?
No, you do, but I just it's just a new way to talk about the podcast, right? And so
I think it's cute.
You think it's cute? Okay.
Yeah, it's like when the sound an animal makes is the word, like
okay,
bok bok, it's like that.
Okay.
There's a word for that. I forgot what it's called. Something like that.
So
you know what I mean?
Wait, but how does that pertain to Yas?
It's cute. It's cute.
Okay.
I think it's called onomatopoeia, but maybe that's not right. But
yeah, I don't know. Okay, well, because it's Yes, a Stripper. I love how it sounds, but just to kind of fill in the audience, I've been saying Yes Podcast and spelling it like that because I'm trying to trick the algorithm on social media to think that we're not doing anything crazy over here, right? The word stripper, don't worry, is not.
No, we're talking about accounting and stuff like that. Right. And really boring over here.
Totally boring. But
we're
also
knitting.
You're knitting, and I'm drinking tea. But I want we wanted this podcast to be more inclusive of sex workers, which it already has been. It's just but in the title, and then we're changing, and this is a good time to talk about this because all of this will have already happened. But we're changing the brand to be more Yas instead of Yes, a Stripper, and we're filing as a nonprofit. Hopefully, if the government website doesn't stay down for much longer, but we're supposed to file as a nonprofit, and we're focusing on telling more stories through media, whether that's the podcast or digital panels or literal short films, basically. And so something for instance, something that I just filmed something that I just edited was a very short mini documentary for the history of pole dance and how strippers made the pole dance industry what it is. And it's specifically for a beginner pole dance group. It's an online conference. And this video is not going to be public. But I made it through the many years of research that I've done and interviews that I've done with strippers and pole dancers, quite honestly, about the history of pole dancing. And so that in and of itself is it's a media project, and I want to do more of that. And so we're changing the whole brand name to YAS Work, YAS Work, right? And I love saying it because it sounds like sex work, but also the last part of it, it's YAS Work. It's swerk, what we're also used to saying. I don't know. Anyways, so
that's it. I didn't know that's what you were doing with this.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we're
makes sense
doing
now.
Yeah. And so it's this transition that's in progress, and I've been slowly changing our logo in some places, but not in Instagram yet. But and we do have other media projects coming up in the near future with other sex worker organizations. So I'm about to get started on that soon as well. And so, this is what I used to do. I did this for fucking years. You remember? Just filming stuff and making videos and doing interviews. And so that's what I've been doing now with sex workers, which is my true calling. And so anyway, Thank you for letting me go through that spiel. I think it's important for our audience to know because I'm going to say all this on Instagram, but it'll be like concise and succinct and won't get the real like vibe behind it. And so I think this is a
Yeah.
good opportunity to like share like what it's like on the back end. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that.
The evolution. It's good. I've actually had several customers recently use the term sex work. And I was like, what? You actually just say that?
Yeah, it's
So
growing.
it is.
Yeah, it's great. Actually, my partner's rich, young, white friend who you would never think, right? One day I heard him correct somebody that used a not very nice term for sex workers. And I was like zoned out, right? I was like completely zoned out because I heard the guy speak like the first 5 words of his sentence. And I was like, I cannot listen to whatever this guy's going to say. So I zoned out and he said something shitty about sex workers. And then our friend was like, do you mean sex workers? And that's when I woke up and I was like, oh
That's
my
awesome.
God, I can't believe this 30-year-old white rich dude who I think knows nothing about marginalized people, said sex workers. So yeah, I was impressed.
It's such a relief. It's such a great relief when you're like, oh, finally, I don't have to do this. Someone
Yeah, you
else can say
do so
something.
much for it. Yes, it's really good. Anyway, enough
Oh,
about me. Let's talk about what's coming on the episode.
exciting times. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about specifically in our industry is elective procedures. So things like augmentations, BBLs, and specifically BBLs today. And our guest today is my friend. Hey, how's it going?
I'm Lucy. Nice to meet you all. Hey, Lisa. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me.
Yeah. So before we start getting into it, just share with everyone your pronouns.
I use she, her, or they, them, but given how I present in my industry, mostly she, her. That works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you identify as a sex worker, right?
I do, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So we know each other from the strip club industry. And I think it's been, when did we meet? I think it was like 2016 or 17 when we met.
So we met when you taught a pole class in Urbana-Champaign when I was still a student. That was in
That's right.
2014.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. It's been over a decade.
Yeah.
Wow. Lots of battle wounds along the way. So I feel like we've both become much bigger and better versions of ourselves in that time. And I attribute a lot of that to the time that I spent working in the club. Wow. Okay. So you have a story. You have a big, beautiful BBL story. Let's start with, I think you got it in 20, I'm trying to refresh my memory. Was it 2018?
So 2021 was my first
Your
plastic
first one. Okay.
surgery ever. Yeah.
Okay. So share with everybody. I have a couple questions that I'm going to ask you, but share with everybody how you came to the idea that you wanted to get it done and how you started going about like researching it and figuring out what you were going to do about it.
Okay, so I'll start with so my very first plastic surgery was my BBL, and I knew from a very, very young age, before I was ever a sex worker, that I wanted to get this procedure done. And this was before it was known as a BBL, before anyone really had popularized it, because even as a very young girl, I was so self-conscious about my lower body because I started growing boobs when I was 9 years old, and I got so much attention for being so top heavy at such a young age and getting catcalled by middle-aged men at 9 years old because I was already a C cup, and just being a very lopsided looking individual because my breasts were so large and I didn't have an equal lower body. So even as a young girl, I was obsessed with the idea of just balancing my proportions and really wanting to find some sort of solution to grow my glutes. And there's only so much you can do in the gym because genetically I was definitely held back in ways like you can't grow your hips in the gym. Like you can only modify your dimensions so much through natural measures. And so as I became more familiar with plastic surgery, and especially as I grew older and started meeting other women who had gotten work done, that's when I really started to become more fixated on the idea of modifying my own body through elective procedures. And how I came to really schedule my first BBL was actually on TikTok, because the algorithm is tailored to you individually. And in time, it knew how obsessed I was with beauty and physiques. And my For You page for a long time was pretty much all either BBLs or gym girlies who were denying their BBLs. And there was one in particular, this TikTok that went pretty viral, of a woman who had gotten this procedure done that looked so good. It was exactly the kind of BBL I always wanted, because it was basically indetectable. Like, she really just looked like she was a very fit woman with blessed genetics. And that was the physique I always wanted. And so I had shopped around a little bit, had some consultations with different surgeons, and ultimately I went with this doctor in Miami for various reasons, because of his bedside manner, because of the results I had seen on his website, and just through my own internet research, and also pricing and affordability. I think at the time, the BBL was $6,000, which objectively is a lot of money, but compared to like a Beverly Hills BBL or somewhere else, because I've known people who've paid upwards of $30,000 for a procedure, which that to me was very outrageous and outside of my price range. So all factors taken into consideration, I went with Dr. David Girth in Miami. And I was very nervous at the time. I remember I was texting you even the day before,
A lot.
wanting to back out of it. I was so scared. I never gotten anything done before. I never even gotten fillers or Botox or anything like that. So I was very, very scared, but I knew it was something I had always wanted. And I mean, even you knew for years and years, I would always be texting you about BBLs and sending you BBL inspos. So it was very much I knew I was going to go through with it, but I was a little bit
I
nervous
did
at
too.
first.
I'm laughing because if everyone could see our Instagram chat feed, it goes back there's always a picture of some girl with a bodacious butt, and me asking Lucy, "Are you asking me if I think it's real?" And it's almost never a naturally gifted ass. Because your algorithm, you brought up sorry, my dog is barking. You brought up the TikTok thing. TikTok made sure that you were getting exactly the content that you needed to kind of drive you into that decision. It was almost unavoidable for you. You mentioned that you knew some people in Beverly Hills that were getting the 30K BBL, and that you're trying to find someone that was more affordable in Miami. Before you met, what was your doctor's name in Miami?
Dr. Girth.
Girth. Before.
Yeah,
That's a
very
great name.
girthy. Yes.
Before you met with him, had you met with any of these Beverly Hills doctors or anyone else anywhere else?
Yeah, I had gotten some virtual consults with a few
Okay.
Beverly Hills doctors, and it just seemed like you were basically paying the Beverly Hills premium. And I think I had one consult with a doctor in Houston, somewhere in Texas, who was very internet famous, like a big Instagram surgeon. And so he was also absurdly overpriced, I think, because of the internet hype. And so ultimately, I went with the Miami doctor largely because of affordability. And also, I think there was this conception at the time of Latina women in Miami and sort of the stereotype of the Miami body, and how I guess at the time too, Miami was considered almost like a factory farm for BBLs, because there were all these facilities where you would go and you would just see women lined up in their bloody fajas, because they were just in and out like a conveyor belt of
Yeah.
BBLs.
Yeah. That's how a lot of the cosmetic surgery industry is. Everyone gets booked on that one day, and the doctor's just going through patients, which is a weird thing to think about. Is you're sort of a product on an assembly line. So you met with Dr. Girth, and you were like, okay, this is the guy. So what did you do to prep for it? Because I don't know a lot about BBLs, and I don't know. The whole idea of it scares me. And I've had 3 breast dogs, and thinking of a BBL just really freaks me out. I'm not sure, maybe because I know some details about your story. So why don't you talk about how you prepared for it and what made you decide that he was the one?
Okay. So as far as preparing for it, I really liked how honest this doctor was. So he also was very realistic and pragmatic in a way that a lot of other doctors were not. It's, it's a very obviously superficial industry, and a lot of plastic surgeons I get money hungry vibes from. And so in some of my other consultations, I got the sense that the surgeons were kind of just telling me what I wanted to hear so that I would spend my money with them. But with Dr. Girth, maybe because he was also so popular because he was operating in Miami, he kind of seemed to not really care whether he got my business or not, which was a green flag to me. And at the time, I remember too, I was wanting something a bit outrageous. I remember saying, well, could you give me like a Nicki Minaj physique? And he just thought I was being so absurd because he was like, look at your scrawny little legs. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you would look insane. I'm not going to do that. And then he also said, you also don't even have enough body fat. So that was kind of the one thing that I sort of prepared. At the time, I weighed maybe 130 pounds at most. And I'm like 5'2", 5'3". So I was like a fairly petite person, and I was exercising quite regularly. So a pretty lean person overall. So I was really trying to gain more body fat leading up to the procedure. But I had scheduled my BBL, I think only like 2 or 3 months out from when I had the initial consult. So it didn't give me a ton of
That's
time
not a
to
lot.
really gain body fat. And
You need to gain like 30 pounds on average. Is that right? Most people have said I had to gain like 20, 30. No?
I don't
I
think
guess it
so. I
depends on how
mean,
big you want to go. Yeah.
yeah, and also depends like on your starting weight because I did have sufficient body fat. The way I'm naturally genetically predispositioned, all my body fat stores around my midsection. So I definitely had enough body fat to get the curvy gym girl physique that I wanted. I guess if I wanted something more extreme, I could have gained a lot more, but I really didn't need to. The surgeon said I could maybe put on another 5 pounds if I wanted to, but that it wouldn't be necessary. And so I think I ultimately did end up gaining maybe 5 or 7 pounds leading up to the procedure. But yeah, I was so unhappy with the way that my natural body shape was. I really just wanted to completely change my proportions. And that ultimately was the main driver for me committing to the surgery.
Yeah. So you had like 8, maybe 10 weeks to prepare for it. Did you feel like they gave you enough of the information for what you were about to go through?
Yes and no. So the way that this facility works, it was called 4 Beauty, like the number 4 Beauty, and it seemed as though most of the staff didn't speak English as their first language, which was fine. Most of the communications that I got from them were written, so I received obviously the contracts to sign, and I received pamphlets sent to me via email about what to prepare the day of and what prescriptions I would need, and just post-op care and things like that. So they mentioned needing fajas and like BBL pillows and having to get the lymphatic drainage massages afterwards. So logistically, I think they really did the best they could to prepare for everything I would need to do. I'm just like a pragmatic, like task-oriented level. I don't think anything could have prepared me for how brutal the recovery was. And now that I have a little bit more plastic surgery experience to reflect on, I realized that initial BBL procedure I got was, it almost felt like I was being butchered in a way because the way that I was handled in the surgery, I now see was so. It was like I was being roughly manhandled. And looking back now and after doing some more research, I now know that a lot of times the surgeon only comes in to do the actual body sculpting, but like as far as like the lipo and everything else, like a lot of times it's the assistants and other people doing it, which also explained why I ended up having some deformities afterwards. But yeah, the actual recovery was so brutal. I just nothing could have
I
prepared me
remember.
for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember when you told me we were trying to work out so that like I could, and then something happened and I couldn't come. And I don't think you had anyone helping you with your recovery, correct? And you weren't in like one of those aftercare facilities where they have people come and check. You were in a hotel, right?
Yeah, I booked an
Yeah.
Airbnb, and I remember having asked one of the like care coordinators, do I need someone to stay with me? And I remember this care coordinator saying, like, we recommend someone stay with you for at least a week, preferably up to 2 weeks. And I had asked a close friend at the time to essentially be my butler, my assistant during my recovery. But I think his availability, like, he could only stay maybe 3 days max. And I had asked the care coordinator, like, is 3 days enough? And she had said something along the lines of, well, it's not recommended, but, maybe it could work. And I just, because I didn't know how brutal it was going to be, I
Hmm.
just told my friend, like, yeah, 3 days is fine. Which definitely was not fine. Like, I was still very much immobile for the first week.
Wow. So, are you okay going into detail with what that experience was like for you? And for anyone listening, if you're not familiar, there's some talk of blood and stuff, and
Yeah, it's
yeah, a little
very,
content
very
warning.
gory. Yes. So
Hmm.
um, I remember being put to sleep. Like, so it was such a sterile, cold, like dark environment. Very, very different from the second procedure I had done. But that first one, they kind of had me, lay down on my back with my arms out, sort of like Jesus on the crucifix. But I was laying on this cold stainless steel table, and I remember the anesthesiologist putting this mask over my mouth, but it was
Hmm.
lopsided. It was put on crooked, and I asked him, like, is this supposed to not be on, like, all the way? And then I remember I blinked, and then the surgery was over, and I woke up still on the stainless steel table in this dark, cold room, but I was all by myself. And I didn't have a faja on either, which I was told I would wake up wearing a faja, but I wasn't wearing anything. And I looked down at my body, and I just looked so deformed. I was so puffy and bruised, and like my body just looked so mutilated. And I had the sense that something wasn't right, because I was supposed to wake up in a faja, and I was all alone, no faja, and I just had this sensation of needing to pee so bad. And there was no one in the room, and I was still just like coming off of anesthesia. And so I ended up peeing myself on the table, because at that point I kind of had no control of my bodily functions. And then a nurse ended up coming in shortly after and like had to clean me up. And I'm trying to think if they put me. I don't think they put me in a faja then, because I was way too puffy.
Can
And
you tell
they just kind
people
of,
that aren't familiar what a faja is?
yeah, it's just like a compressive, or a compression garment that you would wear
Hmm.
after a surgery, and it's meant to just keep you from getting like really puffy. And
Hmm.
it's similar to when people wear like waist trainers or corsets. It's kind of the
Hmm.
same idea.
Yeah, which is pretty common for that type of procedure because you've also had lipo on your front side. And then it sounds like they should have left your catheter in. Well, there's a different type of catheter they can give you. A lot of medical professionals will call it like a hot dog, um, because it's pretty common to, as you're waking up, lose control of bodily functions from
Yeah,
any possible, end. So,
yeah.
um, like that right there, that's an indicator of not quite professional practices.
Yeah, that's the thing too,
Yeah.
because I didn't even know about catheters at the time, because they didn't give me one, which was also what made my recovery so terrible. Was every like 30 minutes I needed to pee,
Hmm.
but because I couldn't move, it was so difficult just to even get up. But the first like 3 days afterwards, I had to pee so much because I wasn't given a catheter. Whereas my second procedure was much more professionally conducted, so didn't have that problem. But yeah, just like needing to pee all the time because of the lack of a catheter, and then just so much blood. So the way that this doctor or this facility went about sort of clearing the lymphatic fluids that build up after a surgery was they had these bulbs that were like, there were these tubes that were just like
Hmm.
in my body going up to my rib cage, like kind of underneath where my breasts were, where they had incisions, and the fluids were just dripping through the tubes and like into these bulbs that were hanging like outside of my body. And it looked
Hmm.
just so gnarly, because it was so bloody, and I was also just bleeding everywhere. And I remember walking out of the clinic to the Uber that my friend had ordered for me, and I was just dripping blood everywhere. and like my friend had put puppy pads on the car seat, but even then I was like bleeding through it. Like it was just,
Oh
it looked like a
no.
crime scene. And walking to the Airbnb from the Uber, just like dripping blood on the sidewalk. Like there was just, it was so much blood everywhere.
Also, red flag. You should never have bodily fluids leaking from any of your um, garments. Your surgical gauze, like all of that should be covered, and usually they're taped down, with plastic or something if there
Yeah.
is excess fluid. So um, you ended up staying. So you get to your Airbnb. You have some assistance for about. He was there for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Usually. I don't know about you, but in my experience, usually the third and fourth day are the most painful because sometimes in surgery they'll give you a painkiller that it has like a longer half-life, and it's meant to last about 3 to 4 days. So usually on that fourth day, your body has completely rid itself of that long-term painkiller, and that's when like you start to feel the effects of edema and everything that's happening. Um, so by day 4, you're completely alone, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How was
Yeah.
that? Did you have meal prep? Did you have meals prepared for yourself? How were you feeding yourself and getting up and going to the bathroom without help?
Yeah, that was brutal. I remember before my friend left, he basically took everything that was like on the floor or anything that would have required me to stoop down or bend over, just putting it sort of like closer to my eye level because like I
Hmm.
couldn't raise my arms, like I couldn't bend, I like couldn't squat. I was so immobile. I felt like a robot. And even like going up, the way this Airbnb was set up, there was like one little stair I had to go up just to get to the bathroom, which seems like nothing. It was maybe like 3 or 4 inches off the
But
ground,
it's a
but
mountain.
yeah, in my state, I couldn't like lift my leg that high. Like I practically needed to be carried, but my body was so sore everywhere from the lipo that I couldn't be touched. So it made it
Hmm.
really difficult to go about places. And so like my friend had helped me just stock up on some snacks and fruits and things like that and put that in the fridge so that I would have food to eat. And I think what I ended up doing, because I ended up staying just 7 days in Miami total, and I think I just like ordered maybe one meal a day because I also just wasn't like able to eat that much in my. I
It's
was
hard.
sleeping a lot, and
Hmm.
honestly, the physical pain was. I mean, obviously, it was brutal, but I think the psychological pain was worse because I remember needing to be fed like a baby by my friend because I just like I couldn't even like lift my head or anything, and I
Hmm.
feel like that exacerbated some kind of childhood trauma or wound in me because I remember crying because I felt so helpless and so dependent. And like I just like was not psychologically prepared for that dynamic or for just like being so unable to fend for myself in any way.
Yes. Let's take a little break, and then we'll come right back.
Are you a sex worker looking for a new podcast to listen to? Stripped by Sia is your answer to learning about the lived experiences of those in the adult industry, with a mission to destigmatize, educate, and humanize sex workers. I am your host, Steph Sia, and you can listen to new episodes every single Sunday wherever you get your podcast. Catch you then!
And we're back. So you're talking about feeling completely helpless. And for anyone listening, if you have a procedure, you are going to feel like this at some point. I've had this moment in every single one of my procedures where I've been strong the whole time and I'm fully aware I feel like crap because of the drugs. I feel like crap because my body just went through something. But at some point, your mental state will cave and you get to that point where you're crying. This last time, I remember waking up and just being in, it was like day 4 or 5, and just, I couldn't take it. I wanted to lay on my side so bad, and I couldn't lay on my side. And I started to crack, I started to cry, and my partner turns over and is like, you can do it. Come on, I'll pick you up. It's really hard to not give into those moments. And if you do, it's okay because you've really gone through something that maybe I feel like we kind of write this pain off because we know it's elective. But if you had any other kind of procedure for your body, you get in an accident or something, you wouldn't feel guilty about crying in those moments. But we tell ourselves that we're not allowed to because we chose to be in this situation, right? You mentioned something too that I think is really important for listeners. Consider the space that you're going to be in while you're recovering, and think about things that you won't have within your reach. If you're having a breast aug, anything where you have to reach your hand above your shoulder, forget about it. Get those plates in the kitchen counter. Get all your snacks on the kitchen counter. If you're having a BBL, like you said, you can't bend over. So get yourself one of those, the things that like old folks use, little pincher,
Yeah.
picker upper things.
Yeah.
Like get things that can help you pick things up, or have a caretaker that can actually be there for that whole duration. Because your circumstance, you've got a completely swollen backside and front side. So, and I think we also don't realize how much we use our core to do everything. My first breast aug, I was not aware that I would not be able to sit up out of bed. And I tried to push myself out of bed to go to the bathroom in the night. And it felt like fire running through my abs, my chest, everything. And I feel like they don't really tell you this part. Like even like my good experiences, like and I think like if someone hasn't actually had that very same procedure, like if your surgeon hasn't had it, they don't even know to think of it that way.
No, for sure. Because especially for me, because I couldn't sit or lay down for I think 3 months. And so, I mean, thankfully, I had been fairly active in the gym for a long time before this procedures, but it was a lot of push-ups. As far as like, laying down on my stomach and then having to get up, it was like so much like upper body strength just to like get in and out of bed or to move about. And so that's something that no one prepared me for. And,
That's a good prep program.
Mhm.
Do your
Yeah.
push-ups before your BBL.
No, you really have to. I mean, who would have thought? But yeah, like that's something that's very needed.
Yeah, right. And I remember like we were talking about training, or I gave you some programs or something around that time. You were really into, well, your skydiving was after, was that before? I can't remember now.
It was, yeah, it was both before and after.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember we were talking about that. So definitely some sort of cross training, because you want your body to be in optimal shape before you go into whatever your procedure is, because you're going to have to rely on some other part of your body is going to compensate for the part that is immobilized for that recovery duration. So if it's your top, you got to work your legs and make sure that you can get up off the floor without using your hands. And if it's your bottom, you're going to have to learn how to walk on your hands. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah. So you went and had um, a pretty standard BBL experience, I would say, that like a lot of dancers have had. You survived it. You were eventually able to fly home, and you get to this point where you're 3 or 4 months post-op, you're recovered, and how are you feeling at this point?
Yeah. So, yeah, the flight home was brutal. I shouldn't have flown home as soon as I did. So in retrospect, that was premature. But 3 to 4 months post-op, I would say my recovery was so slow. I think because the way that I got manhandled in the surgery was just so brutal that the recovery seemed to take a lot longer than it should have, because at 3 or 4 months post-op, at that point, your tissue should kind of be softening. Like the areas that got lipo shouldn't still look and feel so hard and lumpy. But I remember still being like very hard and lumpy. And, I was very diligent about wearing the compression garments and getting the lymphatic drainage massages, but still like looking not right. So I think maybe it was about 6 months out that I really got to see sort of like the full results. And there's something called like the fluffing stage with a BBL, which I don't know if that's true or not, but I felt like my actual like butt and hips had settled in a way that I was very happy with. But it was just some of the sections of my body that had been liposectioned did not heal right. So specifically my stomach area, I don't know who did the lipo, probably was not the surgeon, but it was very lumpy and very uneven. And I just had this strange wavy stomach. It looked very unnatural and distorted. And so that was something that I was hopeful that would eventually go away. And I remember I tried cool sculpting and gotten, even more lymphatic drainage massages because I wasn't sure what it was. And I ended up getting a follow-up consult with that same surgeon and just kind of saying what's going on here. And then he basically confirmed that, it was just kind of one of those unintended, unwanted consequences of surgery where sometimes not everything goes according to plan. And so I would basically need to go get revision lipo done to fix it because like that's how deformed it was.
So at that point, did you end up going back to him to have the lipo, or did you see a different doctor?
I went to a different doctor because at the time I was still skydiving, and I think I started a different corporate job, so I wasn't as active in the sex work space because I'd still been dabbling in OnlyFans, but with internet sex work, it's so much easier, I think, to contort your body in the ways that you want. And so it wasn't sort of at the front of my mind until I had moved to LA in 2022. And at that point, that was when I initially had the sugar daddy. I was still trying to make it in OnlyFans. And then I think I had picked up another job at a strip club at the time because I had lost my corporate job, and so I was trying to make ends meet. And then my stomach deformity issue was really bothering me so much, and I thought about going back to Dr. Girth in Miami, but at the same time I was hesitant because it was at his facility where I got the deformity, where, where I got botched, that's where it happened. So I kind of didn't want to go back. And then again, I'd have to go back to Miami and then figure out who's going to take care of me and all that stuff. And I didn't know how intense it would be. And so then I ultimately decided to stay local and go with a surgeon in LA that seemed very reputable. And so that's ultimately what I ended up doing.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because this is this is when I saw you going through a lot. We were talking a lot more at this time, and I think a lot of that too is compounded with everything else you were going through, like job loss, and then trying to find the best way to take care of yourself while you're trying to finance a surgery, which you saved up cash for this, right? I know the first one you did, right?
Yeah, so the first one I was able to pay for quite easily because the first one was $6,000, and at the time I was making a pretty decent income at my corporate job, and I was living in Phoenix with roommates. So my cost of living was so low that it was kind of no problem for me to afford the first surgery. And then the second one, I was living alone in LA. I was financially unstable. And so I think I ended up kind of splitting my payment there because I had some cash saved up, but then I also had applied for a care credit card. So I put some of it on that as well.
Those care credit cards, like they definitely come in handy if you have a situation like what you went through or what I went through. But you have to be careful with that, like interest, that 0% interest. If you don't pay it off in time, they get you later with it. But it's good that like you had a resource. So you found this doctor and you're like, okay, I need the lipo. I'm not happy with this part of the surgery. And then you ended up getting a full a revision to the BBL itself, right?
Yeah, I went to this doctor who had actually done my friend's BBL, and I never would have thought she had a BBL. Like she just looked like a naturally curvaceous person. And doing extensive research on various local surgeons, he just seemed to be extremely reputable. And going on Real Self and just looking through all the reviews on Google, and again having consulted with some other Los Angeles doctors, I decided to go with him. He operates out of, I think, Sunset Cosmetic Surgery is the name of the facility. And initially, of course, the main qualm I had with my body was the botched lipo. And what ended up happening was every single surgeon I consulted with, whether they were in Los Angeles or elsewhere, because I was even consulting with New York and Chicago and Texas surgeons, and every single surgeon said that they would not touch my stomach, and saying that they would not do a revision lipo for me because it was too risky, and that if they were to go in and try to fix it, that it would leave even more scar tissue, and it was just too risky because I might look even lumpier and even worse. So this was honestly the only surgeon I consulted with out of all the ones I met with who said that he could do the revision lipo, and that was ultimately my main concern anyways. And also I noticed after my BBL, my arms got chubbier, which I guess is kind of a common effect because, most of your body or your fat cells in your body have been transferred. So yeah, my arms had gotten thicker, and so I was already wanting to not only fix my botched stomach, but I also wanted to get lipo done on my arms. And when I had my BBL, I was very happy with the way my butt and hips looked, but there were like certain areas of my butt where I thought like, oh, it could be like a little bit rounder, or maybe there's like a dimple here, or maybe some cellulite. 'Cause, you know, we're all so critical, and like I've always been such a perfectionist and just such a
You are.
stickler to myself. And so I was thinking, you know, why don't I just do like what would essentially be what I thought was like a mini BBL, which I would get like my stomach fixed, I would get my arms nipped and tucked, and then I would just have that fat taken and just put into the areas of my butt where I could like maybe just fill out a little bit more. And at the time, I was thinking maybe at most, the amount of fat that they would harvest would be like 200 cc's, like tops. And I thought, you know, that wouldn't really make a huge difference because I was already happy with the way my body looked. I just wanted it to be like slightly modified a little bit.
Your butt was beautiful.
Yeah, and that's not what happened at all. I remember telling the surgeon specifically, like, I just want like a little bit. Like, I don't want it to be like a big, like, you know, second BBL or anything like that. I really shouldn't have even said the word BBL because that's like not what I wanted. But yeah, that surgeon said that he understood my vision and that he was going to execute it the way I wanted, and he did not at all. He ended up harvesting, I think it was like over 500 cc's of fat, and like using all of it to put into my butt, and basically giving me this ginormous, huge, like astronomical ass that I did not want and did not ask for. And it was very, very upsetting.
You kind of had the original idea, the Nicki Minaj ass. That was kind of your second ass was closer to that than the first
Yeah.
one. The first one was kind of a little gym girly bubble butt.
Yeah, it was. It
And
was great.
so
I was so happy with it.
it was awesome. So now you have like this other problem. Well, another problem created from trying to solve the other problem. So then what did you do after that?
Oh gosh. So I was very upset, rightfully so. And but I had also noticed I'd gained a little bit of weight since then. Cause at that point, I think after my second BBL, I weighed maybe like 145, 147 pounds. So I was about 15 pounds heavier than I was when I had gotten my first BBL. And so at first I was hopeful, like maybe if I just lose the weight, then, you know, my butt will shrink naturally. But that didn't necessarily solve the problem of my proportions now being different and all the fat cells being in my butt. And then also with like the BBL fluffing stage, whether that's true or not, it seemed to really hit me hard the second time around because it seemed like my butt just would not stop growing and just kind of kept expanding and expanding. And it was just out of control. Like I felt like I would walk into a room and then my ass would walk in 5 minutes later. Like it just like it just like overtook my identity and felt like it was just ruining my life in every way.
It kind of had its own zip code for a while there. It was, but you
I
were
had
still
so much.
active. Like you were
Yeah.
dancing all the time. I don't know. I think you said you had kind of laid off the gym for a little bit, but you were like every time I open Instagram, you're in a dance class and doing all these heels things. So it wasn't like you weren't active. You were burning calories. Um, but your butt was just kind of any fat that your body was producing went straight to your butt. I think it's important here to say, you know, no matter what procedure you're getting done, it's always important to make sure that you get a physical beforehand and make sure that there's nothing else going on. Because we had talked about that, like such rapid weight gain. I suffer from Hashimoto's disease, so my thyroid underproduces hormones, which means my weight can also go up and down, you know, more, more usually upwards. But these are certain things you want to get checked for any type of markers for things that could complicate your surgery or like affect your results or just cloud. You know, if your doctor sees something like that, it might change the way they go about your procedure or how they advise you should move forward. And you had so much stress in your life at that time, you know,
Yeah.
so it makes sense that your body was kind of holding on to whatever it could hold on to. And at that time, it was your ass.
Yeah.
So how did you solve that problem? Now you don't want this ass that he gave you. So what did you do next?
Yeah, so I wanted to get, I guess, a reverse BBL is what you would call it, but basically you would just get lipo to get rid of the fat that had been injected into your butt. And so I went back to the same surgeon who had done my second BBL, just because he was the only surgeon, again, who said he could do it under local anesthesia. Because had I gone to any other surgeon, because again, I shopped around, every other surgeon said that I would have to be put to sleep for it. And so that would mean incurring OR fees, and it would just be like just way more of an expenditure. And given how stressed I was, especially financially at the time, I just like could not go through with another like full body anesthesia procedure. And so this surgeon said he would do it under local anesthesia. So I ended up going through with a reduction with him. And keep in mind, the second BBL, I got like 500 cc's of fat injected on top of what I had already gotten done the first time. And I think he removed from each butt cheek maybe like 200 cc's of fat, like not very much. And so like the in-office procedure went fine as far as there not being complications, and like nothing went awry, but honestly it made kind of no physical difference. Like I remember waiting even several months after and just not seeing a difference. I thought my butt kind of looks exactly the same. It looks like he didn't even touch it. So I was quite upset about that, and that's when I started shopping around again for other surgeons who could reverse this BBL even more, and kind of running into that same problem where every doctor would only do it under general anesthesia, which I was even tempted to do. I was like, what if I just put it all on my care credit card? But thankfully shied against that, because that would have been so expensive. And so ultimately I ended up going back to him several months later. Just at that point I was kind of desperate to get rid of this butt, because it just like would not shrink. And I was so adamant. I think he could tell how upset I was about it, because I straight up said to the doctor, like, this is ruining my life. Like, it's so big. It looks preposterous. I look like a joke. Like, I need this shrunk, like, at least 50%. Like, this is way too much. And I feel like maybe he interpreted it as me, like, insulting his work. But at that point, I didn't even care, because I kind of faulted him for it, because he put me in that position when it wasn't what I wanted. And so I'm back a second time to get it reversed. And at that point, I think he ended up taking out like 500 cc's of liquid from each side. So it was quite a lot. And then at that point too, I don't know what was going on that day, but the painkillers and the Xanax, like nothing was really knocking me out or working. So I was kind of feeling everything. And so it was physically very painful and excruciating, but I was able to see like the end result, because I could see all the gunk that had been extracted from my butt. And so I was very hopeful this time around that it was actually going to do something. And the second removal coincided with my GLP-1 journey, because I was on semaglutide and then tirzepatide. So while I had gotten this removal, I had also lost 45 pounds in the span of 3 months. So I just shrunk so much overall. And so, yeah, my butt definitely got way smaller at that point.
So you went through your second BBL reduction to get rid of your preposterous ass. How was the level of pain with that local anesthesia?
I would say, because
On 1 to
local
10.
anesthesia is like not perfect, right? So there were some areas where it felt like nothing, and some areas where it was like it felt like parts of my ass were like on fire because of the pain. So I would say 0 to 1 in most areas, and then like a 9.5 in others. That was just the first one though. The second one, because the painkillers and whatever just didn't really seem to be kicking in, that one I would give probably like an 8.5 overall.
Yeah, I remember when you told me about that. I couldn't believe that you had a local for something that invasive. I just want to ask you a couple more questions, because we're getting close on time. Your story just has so many details in it. I just feel for you right now. I can't believe that you did that under local anesthesia. I'm wondering if, because you had been on semaglutide and you had lost all this weight, do you feel like if someone else is in your shoes and they've had like a similar experience where they definitely want to get that reduction, do you think it's better for them to lose whatever extra weight they have at that time, or if they're not at like their typical maintenance weight, to try to do that first before getting the reduction? Do you think that do you still think that would you advise that first? And also, do you still think that if that was your case, would he have had to take as much?
Yeah, so oh gosh, if someone was in my shoes, I definitely think it's wise to get to your goal weight first, or to get to your
Mm-hmm.
maintenance weight. Because for me, I was very very overweight when I was at my biggest, when my butt was at its biggest. And so had I been at my maintenance weight, he definitely would not have had to take out as much. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, because I think everyone's bodies, like, we all fluctuate, and it just, all the fat settles so differently for everyone. So
It's
I
so
knew my
hard to tell.
proportions. Yeah, like my
Mm-hmm.
proportions would still be like very unnatural looking, even though I had lost the weight.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I'm happy with how things settled now. My main
Yeah.
problem right now, though, is that I have Ozempic butt, because I lost so much weight and so much fat so quickly that now, like, my skin hasn't properly retracted. So that's something else that I might have to deal with in the future. But in the meantime, I'm just back in the gym trying to build up muscle, because I lost all my
Yeah.
muscle mass too. But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, it would be best to get to your goal or maintenance weight first, which
Yeah.
I mean, in retrospect, I should have done that first, but I don't regret getting my second BBL removal, just because I knew I wanted the natural proportions again, because I was just so sick of all the gross attention that I was getting because of my butt.
It almost brings it back to how you felt when you were 9 years old, getting all this gross attention because of your boobs, and now you're getting it from the backside too. Um, I'm wondering if are there plastic surgery doulas? Because hearing your story makes me really wonder if there are people out there that can guide someone through your experience. With breast implants, it's different. I mean, of course, there's complications. I've had complications, but you can always just get the implant removed, and then there's probably gonna have to be a lift or something. But with a BBL, it's so hard to tell because it's your own tissue that you've moved from one part of your body to the other, and it's going to grow and expand as your diet changes or you're on medications, or all these different factors. It's so hard to tell. I really think that we should always have someone that's professional in our corner that's either been through it or a therapist, because I watched you go through so many phases of this in the last couple of years. I've watched you go through this for so many years, and no doubt it like had an impact on you. Like, there's no way that anyone could go through this without feeling a certain way.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I wish I had like a mentor or some sort of guidance. Because obviously, in retrospect, I would have done things so differently. But at the time, like, you only know so much, and you operate at the level of
Hmm.
awareness you have in the moment. And so, I mean, now I would say I am mostly content with where I'm at, and it's
Hmm.
definitely made me much, much, much more cautious about elective
Hmm.
procedures going forward. Like, I still have not touched my face at all, mostly out of fear. Like, I haven't even done like Botox or fillers, because I am so afraid of getting botched now.
Yeah.
And, thinking about like wanting like a breast lift, and just minor things like that, I still will not pull the trigger on, just because I had this jarring experience that has made me so much more wary and hesitant to get anything done again.
Right. Rightly so. If there's anything that you would advise to anyone thinking about going through this, what would you want to tell them?
Oh gosh. I mean, I would never tell someone not to go through with it. I see a
Hmm.
lot, because I was on a bunch of these like BBL recovery support groups and forums and things. And a lot of times, too, I think when someone pitches that they're thinking about plastic surgery, like the socially acceptable response seems to be people like talking them out of it, being like, oh, you don't
Hmm.
need it. Like, oh, it's so dangerous, blah, blah, blah. And like, sure, like, no one technically needs an elective surgery, obviously.
Right.
But I just think, like, for me, I mean, that first BBL really changed my life, in the sense that it gave me so much confidence, and I was so obsessed with myself afterwards. Granted, I was still botched in other ways, but I was still like, I was so happy I went through with it, and it was absolutely worth all the blood and pain and everything. So if someone's thinking about it, like I would definitely encourage them to go through with it if, again, depending on their motives, because I never cared what anyone else thought about my body. Like I was never concerned with like external validation in that sense. It was all about how I perceived myself, and I knew
Yeah.
like how much happier I would be. So I would say, to other people, if they're thinking about surgery and like they know that it would make them happy, regardless of what other people think. Because one of my close friends just got breast implants and now she's an F cup. And I think it's absurd. Most people think it's absurd, but she's happy. So I would say, even if it's objectively absurd to the outside party, like that doesn't matter if it's something you want to do. So I would say definitely like go for it if you like in your heart know that that's what you want and you just know that it would make you happy. But then obviously like proceed with caution, do your research, and then I would say afterwards, if something goes wrong, because a lot of times things go wrong, and so to always be prepared for that. So for one, like obviously have like a financial cushion in case you need to like get modifications, but then also I would say really lean on either like a therapist or someone who's going to be brutally honest with you, because then if you pitch like a crazy idea that maybe in the moment you're emotional about because you're unhappy with like being botched or whatever deformity might have come out of the procedure, that you have like a sounding board or someone who's going to be very rational with you and sort of talk some sense into you if you need it. Because I think too, we can often go overboard. Like sometimes if like one thing went wrong, we'll like swing the pendulum all the way to like the opposite side and like go too far to try to rectify it. And so I think, being realistic too and understanding like no surgery is going to be totally perfect, most likely. And no human body is going to be perfect, whether naturally or like modified. Like there's always going to be imperfections in everyone and every body. And so like having to sort of like be okay with that and knowing that even if you get the best of the best results, like there's probably going to be something that you still want to tweak, and just increasing your window of tolerance for that. Like, like just like at some point you have to stop chasing perfection. And I think that's really hard for especially women to internalize, especially like women who depend on their aesthetics for a living, as most sex workers do. But just like quit chasing perfection and just like understand at some point like good enough is good enough, and just like leave it there and like stop tweaking with your looks.
And change your algorithm.
That
Start looking at other things, because it definitely it feeds into it. Is there anything we didn't cover today that you want to mention?
I mean,
I feel
as
like we
far as
covered a
like
lot.
plastic surgery goes, or like sex
Yeah.
work in general.
Anything you want to leave anybody with? You've already said so much, but I just love hearing you talk.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, you're the best.
I
I
miss
would
you so
say
much.
I miss you so much. Oh God, it's been so long. You need to come visit. I would say if you find yourself spiraling about something like your beauty or plastic surgery, oftentimes that's an indicator that something in your life is either lacking or going wrong. Because
Yeah,
usually, if you're feeling pretty content and secure and confident in yourself, like you'll want maybe to get work done. You'll think about it, but it won't be such like a root pillar of your life, and you won't be so obsessed and like ruminating about it. And
right.
so usually if you are like so anxious about something like your looks or like surgery, it's a good idea to either see a therapist or take into account your life holistically and think to yourself, like, is there something lacking? Like, do I feel unfulfilled as a person? Like, do I need to pursue a goal, or do I need to change something internally? Like, am I just suffering from low self-worth or from confidence issues? Because oftentimes, if everything in your life is at a place where you are happy with, you're not going to be so fixated or so, just like strung out about something like your body. So I think that can be very telling. And so I would say definitely before you really dive down the rabbit hole of elective procedures, like try to get your mental health right first, and that'll
Yes.
just minimize your chances of regret later on, because I was not in a
Right.
good place mentally when I got my second procedure, and it showed. So I would say, just make sure that you're mentally in a good place when you're making these permanent decisions.
Especially if you're a sex worker, because those decisions can put you out of work for a long time. You came out of it okay. But it's just something to be mindful of as self-employed people. Um, thank you so much for sharing your story. I was really excited to have you come on because I knew so much detail in your story, and working the club, the conversation, you hear it going around like, oh, I should get a BBL. I always think of you whenever I hear someone say that, or when I hear someone say, I'm going to get my boobs done. I think of my story and I'm like, hold on, please come talk to me after shift. So I just want to let you know there's some things you should ask. There's a way to do this so that you don't get botched, and you can come out with a good story. So, and a lot less pain. You don't have to share any info about where you are online if you don't want to, but if you want to, you can go ahead and share Instagram or wherever you're hanging out. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll do my my SW account. So
Yeah.
you can find me on Instagram. My handle is Lovergirl Lucy. It's just LOVERGIRLLUCY. It's kind of a dead account, but I need to reactivate it. So yeah, you can find me on there.
Yeah.
And yeah, DM me if you have plastic surgery questions. I definitely want to spare people from going through what I went through. So I'm always here to help.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It was very helpful for me, and I hope someone else out there, you got the information that you needed if you're thinking about doing this. And I really hope that you have a really great day. I hope you have a great life. And I know we're going to talk again soon. And I am going to come visit you. I'm definitely in need of a West Coast trip. It's been like 4 years now, maybe 5. I think it's been 5. Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank
Love
you so
you.
much for having me, Lisa. I love you. I'll talk to you soon. Right,
Okay.
bye.
Bye. Okay, so let's take a quick break, and then we're going to come back for a little chat with our producer.
As a way to support our work at YAS Podcast, we created a store, the YAS Store. All of the art in the store is made by sex workers, and all of the profits get shared with sex worker artists. Go to yasstore.shop to get your gear. It's stuff for sex workers, pole dancers, and sex worker allies. 10% of profits are shared with sex worker organizations. It's a great way to support our podcast and sex workers everywhere. That's yasstore.shop.
And we're back. What's up?
Quick chat. That was a long one, but it was great. That was good. Yeah. It was like, there was something about her voice, and it just was like listening to it. And you were like, I love listening to you talk. I was like, yeah, this is good. I like listening to her talk too. Yeah. That was awesome. What a story. That's a crazy story.
It is. She's been through a lot. Like I said, you could open up our Instagram chat and just see a timeline of this is what I want to get done. And then, oh my God. And then just a bunch of pictures of butts. So many butts.
Yeah.
I never would want to get a BBL like that. The idea of lipo, it scares me. I can't even stand like when I have to get like my blood drawn, like seeing the needle go in. So just knowing something that big going under my skin, it just gives me the creeps. So the people that can handle that, like thinking about it and even go through with it, like more power to them.
Right.
Yeah, it's a pretty intense procedure. And like we've said before, a lot of these doctors, I feel like they don't really like prime the patient for what's actually happening to them.
Yeah,
So.
I like the idea of a plastic surgery doula. That's a great idea. Yeah.
They have to be out there. They have to be out there. If you are a doula, you're listening to this, DM us because there's probably we could connect you with some people.
Yes.
Maybe we'll get a lot of people looking.
Yeah. Well, this has been great, Lisa. Close us out.
Yeah. Well, that's all we have for today. Thanks for listening, everybody. And please remember to like and subscribe and rate our podcast. Bye.
Bye.
YAS Podcast is produced by YAS Work, which is a nonprofit dedicated to educating and entertaining audiences about sex work through media. Learn more about how you can get involved in the podcast and our organization by visiting yaswork.org. That's YASWORK.org.